Okay, everybody ready? So we have this medial lemniscus, the medial lemniscus, and I'm just going to, so here's the midbrain, that's the third cranial nerve right there. This is the midbrain. Okay, here's your third cranial nerve. Okay, that's where we're coming from. So we just finished traveling up, and you can see the midbrain to the cranial nerve, so we're right here. Okay, we're just going to continue on up. Again, this is my cortical region. Here's my thalamus, thalamus, singular. Okay. And what structure did we talk about that's residing in between the thalami? Yeah, third ventricle. Awesome. That's your third ventricle. Cut out the third ventricles. That makes these. Does anybody remember? Yeah, those are your lateral ventricles. And here's your cerebral aqueduct coming down off the ventricles. And then these we haven't talked very much about yet. We're going to talk a whole lot more about them later on in the semester when we get to, these are part of the basal ganglia system. These are caudate and putamen. They're basal ganglia, just a collection of nuclei that are really important for motor function. Okay. And then, so we're coming up. So we're on, this is the person's right side. So this would be the right, and then this would be the left. So we're coming up here on the right side, going straight up. So we're going to end up here on the right side in the somatosensory cortex. So I'll just label somatosensory cortex. Resides in the parietal lobe and the postcentral gyrus. Somatosensory cortex. And remember, we started off on the right side, the left side of the body. Now we're transmitting that information up to the right side, the right somatosensory cortex. And you have, we're traveling up as one track, and I'll just make it one track right now. And that track is, what's the name of that track again? Yes, medial something. Medial lemniscus, good. Okay, this is your medial lemniscus. And again, when we do our cross sections through the brainstem, we're going to see the medial lemniscus, and that means that that information carries. Yep, thank you, medial lemniscus. Okay, so what information is carried in the medial lemniscus tract that's going through the brainstem? Fine touch, proprioception, and vibration. Yes, you got it. That's it. That's where we are. All that information. Now, up here, this medial lemniscus, this second order neuron, is going to synapse here in the thalamus. Okay. It's going to synapse on a special nucleus in the thalamus, and that nucleus is. So it's abbreviated VPL, okay? It's ventral posterior lateral. Okay, and that's just a specific part or the specific group of nuclei that reside in the thalamus. And those nuclei are just named for the position in the thalamus. So those nuclei are going to be in the ventral posterior lateral portion of the thalamus. Okay, in general. So DCML comes up, and then we have coming out of the VPL, this is going to be your third order neuron, sends an axon out through this space. So this space is between the basal ganglia here, and this is another part of the basal ganglia, and your lateral ventricles. Okay, that axon is going to travel all the way up to the somatosensory cortex and synapse. And I like to talk about this space. This is right here, the space, all this space. This is called your internal capsule. capsule, C-A-P-S-U-L-E, internal capsule. And the internal capsule is just nothing more than the space that resides between the thalamus and the ventricles and the basal ganglia. It's just a white matter tract that's going to have a lot of important information traveling through it. We'll talk about later. Okay. So like I said, this is your third order neuron here in the thalamus, and specifically it's in the ventral posterior lateral portion of the thalamus, that group of nuclei. Questions? So this is the most complicated of the two pathways, but you know, once we get up here, it's good to go. And then let's go ahead and look at one more. This is the DCML tract, and this is just going to be a quick overview. That's all. Let's label this. These are black. So go ahead and put my dots in, because that's going to travel right down the middle. So we can clearly see the decussation of the internal arcuate fibers. And we're also going to label this, let's say this section of the spinal cord, or this point in the spinal cord right here, I'm going to say that is T6, just to give us a landmark. Okay, so information. There's the first order neuron below the level of T6. First order neuron, pseudounipolar cell body sitting there in the dorsal root ganglia, is going to take up information from lower extremities. So DCML and its lower extremity, fine touch, proprioception, vibration. Okay, DCML is going to travel in through the dorsal gray horn and then travel up the spinal cord. And what tract was that again? DCML, lower extremity information, travels what tract in the spinal cord? Fasciculus gracilis, good. We're going to come in to the spinal cord and then travel all the way up the tract known as fasciculus gracilis, and then we're going to synapse with a second order neuron here in the medulla. Okay, and then above the level of T6, we have same situation happening. You have your first order neuron, pseudounipolar cell body, coming in here, and it's going to carry DCML upper extremity information. Above the level of T6, it's going to cell body, dorsal root ganglia, axon coming out, travel up the spinal cord and the tract known as fasciculus cuneatus. Okay. Both fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus will synapse with their respective nuclei at the level of the caudal medulla, which are nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus. So for upper extremity, nucleus cuneatus. For lower extremity, nucleus gracilis. And then what happens with the second order neurons? Everybody remember? Decussates to the opposite side, both of them. And what's that decussation called? Internal arcuate fibers. Great. So these are your internal arcuate. A-R-C-U-A-T-E, fibers. And then both travel up together. I'll represent that with just blue. There's both pieces of information. Both tracts are traveling up through the same tract, and that tract is here. The name of that tract was medial lemniscus. So dorsal column, medial lemniscus. Medial lemniscus. Again, lemniscus is nothing more than a bunch of axons traveling together through three-dimensional space. And that's going to synapse up here in the ventral posterior lateral portion of the thalamus for your third order neuron. So here's your second order. Okay, and then this is your third order, VPL of thalamus. And that third order neuron then sends out an axon that synapses in the somatosensory cortex and the postcentral gyrus in the parietal lobe. Quick overview. Like I said, DCML is the most complicated of the two pathways. Spinal fluid tract is pretty primitive. DCML comes up those dorsal columns. Those dorsal columns are highly myelinated. It's a very fast system. It's like a superhighway because there's so much myelin in those dorsal columns. Compared to the spinal fluid tract, that's like a country road. Very basic information coming up there. Questions? See where we are? All right, let's move on then to the spinal fluid tract. You're still recording. Everything's good. Okay. Keep going. So, spinal fluid tract in detail, but much easier. Okay, spinal fluid tract carries which modalities? Crude touch, pain, and temperature. This one has some cool implications at the end of it too, so hopefully it'll be a little bit interesting. So, first order neuron resides in dorsal root ganglia, pseudounipolar neuron. This is not working very well. Pseudounipolar neuron, dendrites come out and receive that information from the environment. Okay. Axons from the first order neuron come in and they synapse immediately in the dorsal gray horn. This is the dorsal gray horn. They synapse on a nucleus here that resides in the dorsal gray horn, and that's going to be your second order neuron. And the second order neuron lives in a very specific space. It's a part of the dorsal gray horn. It has a name. Does anybody know it? Always reminds me of Harry Potter. Believe it or not. So this is called substantia, S-U-B-S-T-A-N-C-I-A, gelatinosa. You can see Hermione Granger saying substantia gelatinosa, right? That's why it reminds me of Harry Potter. Substantia gelatinosa. Gelatinosa. S-U-B-S-T-A-N-C-I-A. Substantia gelatinosa is G-E-L-A-T-I-N-O-S-A. Gelatinosa.
And that's just the space where the...
This is nothing more. So I sort of outlined it here in gray, and this is just a space. I'll put that down there. Good. So space where second order neuron resides. And that's specific for only the STT. So spinal thalamic tract has its own little area where all second order neurons are going to live in three-dimensional space in the spinal cord. It's called substantia gelatinosa.
You said only in the S.
Yep. Because remember, the DCML doesn't synapse in the spinal cord. DCML synapses on its own nucleus, gracilis and cuneatus, up at the level of the medulla. But STT comes in, synapses right away in dorsal gray horn. Okay, this is your second order neuron here. That's your second order neuronal cell body, and since it's a second order neuron, we know something's got to happen. What's got to happen with second order neuron? Crosses over. And we also found out that when everything crosses over, well, let's give it a place to cross to. Here's, as I said before, the place where it's going to travel up the spinal thalamic tract is going to be that anterolateral spinal thalamic tract. So this is just nothing more. We labeled this last time. There's my spinal thalamic tract, and this is where that axon is going to travel up through into the brain. Okay, this is your spinothalamic tract. Okay, second order neuron resides here in the substantia gelatinosa, comes across and decussates and goes into the spinal thalamic tract and then travels on up. Travels up through that tract in the spinal cord. Okay, it's all levels. So spinal that just comes in from, let's say on this is my left side. So if it comes in on the left side, it immediately crosses over, decussates onto the right side, and the fibers, as they're decussating, have a name. They're called anterior white commissure, C-O-M-M-I-S-U-R-E. They cross over, so the second order neuron cell axons from the STT pathway cross over at the level of the spinal cord in a pathway known as, or a series of axons known as the anterior white commissure. C-O-M-M-I-S-U-R-E. And again, check it on the slides too, just to be sure, because my spelling isn't the best. Okay, and remember, so we cross over here to the opposite side, and then they're going to travel up the spinal cord through this spinal thalamic tract, which is nothing more than all the white matter axons coming up through from the spinal thalamic tract. It travels up. It's going to come in here and enter. So it's going to go through the midbrain. It's going to go through the pons, and it's going to go through the medulla, through the pons, and through the midbrain. Just travel straight on up. Nothing else happens. Decussation happens at the level of the spinal cord. Questions? Yes, Pat? That's the name. So the anterior white commissure. Remember how we called the fibers crossing over for the DCML the internal arcuate fibers? Yeah. These fibers they cross over at the point that's called the anterior white commissure. Okay, so you just see a bunch of white matter crossing over through that gray matter. That's what it looks like.
So that's the site of decussation.
That's the site of decussation, correct. Any other questions? Can I? Oh, nope. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's keep going up then. So we're at the level of the midbrain. Now let's look at the third order neuron, or what happens after the level of the midbrain. Okay. So here we have again the ventricles, these are my ventricles. There's my lateral ventricle, third ventricle. Here's my thalamus. It's my basal ganglia. There's my thalamus. And we're still coming in here from the right side. So this is going to be my right, and this is going to be my left. So this color is green. So here's going to be the STT, the spinothalamic tract, traveling up through the midbrain, and it's going to synapse here in the thalamus on a third order neuron. There's my third order neuron. And that third order neuron in the thalamus also resides in the VPL, or the ventral posterior lateral portion of the thalamus. So here's my... It's in ventral posterior lateral portion of the thalamus, just like the DCML pathway. No difference. Okay, and then from there, that third order neuron then sends out, it actually travels through this internal capsule again, so that axon travels through the internal capsule and then relays information to the somatosensory cortex. Okay. That's one thing I want to show. I want to show something else too. There's some other cool things that happen. If I had to draw, this is if I'm representing here those fibers that connect both the right and the left halves of the brain. Does anybody remember what that's called? Yeah. So this is going to be your corpus callosum. Okay, there's your corpus callosum. And right above the corpus callosum, we had talked previously about a special gyrus. I mentioned it a little bit the first step. Yeah, that's your cingulate gyrus, right? So really, I'm going to draw a pair. So here's longitudinal fissure. So this is one side and this is the other side. This is the right side, this is the left side. So I'm going to draw a pair of gyri here. Okay, this is just representing a gyrus, two gyri. Okay, and this is going to be the cingulate gyrus. C-I-N-G-U-L-A-T-E, gyrus. G-Y-R-U-S. Or gyri for plural, right? So that's your cingulate gyrus. Does anyone remember anything about, what's the cingulate gyrus hooked up to? Wow, you guys are good. Right. So cingulate gyrus is part of the limbic system. In the limbic system, does anybody know what that does? It moves you. Memory, olfaction, yeah, you guys are going to be great next year too. But the E, what does the E stand for? Do you know? Emotion. Right. So, here you go. What happens is the SCT is carrying pain, temperature, crude touch, comes up, and in addition, this axon, in addition to making a connection here with the somatosensory cortex, it also synapses on the cingulate gyrus. Why do you think that happens? Any thoughts? How did you know that? Very good. Yeah, you cry when you have pain. Absolutely. That's what happens. Okay, that pain is so intense, and it's so intense because it makes a connection with the cingulate gyrus, and that stimulates your emotion. And the emotion is, sad, pain, all of it comes through, right? You start to cry. When my daughter was little, she came home one day and she said, "Mommy, a boy kicks a soccer ball and hit me really hard in the head today, and I didn't even cry." I'm like, good for you. But that's an example, right? That's what this is for. So that's the cingulate gyrus connection. There's one more connection. Anybody ever break a bone or been in really, really bad pain before? Yeah, okay. And how was your sleep that night when you're in really bad pain, unless you're on pain med? Yeah, you don't really sleep, do you? So what actually happens, and I'm just going to represent this going in this direction. So you have this information is going to come down all the way to the level of the medulla. Okay, let's see if we can go back here. Go back to this picture, because this is where we were. So we're coming back down to the level of the medulla here, and you're going to make an important connection What thing do you think is involved in awareness or awakeness? Anybody remember what this reticular formation, right? Very good. So here you go. This is your reticular formation. So what happens is that pain coming up is so intense, it keeps you awake, makes you cry, hits your emotions through the limbic system, and it also makes a connection with reticular formation. That's your awakeness and awareness. So it's really hard to fall asleep when you're in really bad pain. Okay? Does that make sense? Hopefully just three different, so your somatosensory cortex gets that information, but you know, if something really hurts, your body wants to make sure that you're paying attention to it. It's going to make you do it. Question? Awareness, awakeness, yeah. Well, you'll learn more about different states that you can be in. And if that particular formation is hit, then you're not aware or awake. Both are accurate. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and quickly review. Like I said, the spinal thalamic tract is the easiest. Okay, do my midline here. Okay, and I can put in my important players. I'm going to put in my reticular formation here. Just draw that in because we're going to come back and hit it again. All right. I can put my corpus callosum here connecting both sides. As well as my cingulate gyrus, I think was purple. Yeah, and then a cingulate gyrus here. On each side. Okay. So first order neuron. And this is the right side, and this is the left side. First order neuron sitting out here, pseudounipolar subneuron and dorsal root ganglia with dendrites, picks up information for the spinal thalamic tract. That is crude touch, pain, and temperature. Okay, that first order neuron is going to come into the spinal cord and synapse immediately on a second order neuron that resides in an area known as the substantia gelatinosa, and that second order neuron decussates immediately to the opposite side. Okay, and it travels up through the spinal cord in the spinal thalamic tract, through the medulla, pons, midbrain, all on the same side, on the right side now. Synapse with the third order neuron in the VPL of the thalamus. And that nucleus in the thalamus sends out an axon to somatosensory cortex, to the cingulate gyrus, as well as to the reticular formation. I think you guys are getting it. Awesome. Questions? Any questions about that? Yes?
The reticular formation again.
Oh, the reticular formation, the pain causes you to stay awake. You have trouble sleeping with pain. Let me try to put that down. because the particular formation, once it's activated, it keeps you, it's your off-on switch for your brain of awareness and awakeness. And cingulate gyrus, that's great. Questions about the whole thing? Going over it again. I think this is the easier of the two. Decussates in the spinal cord and then just travels all the way up.
So
More
again,
primitive of the two.
would the pain not be sent to the somatosensory?
Yep, it is. It's here's a somatosensory. I'll label that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if like it gets diverted down to the formation only, or if it continues.
It continues, yeah, it doesn't, yeah, so it comes up to the level of the thalamus, and then the synapses in the thalamus, these are third order nuclei that send out a synapse here to the somatosensory cortex, here to the cingulate gyrus, and also down here to the reticular formation.
Okay.
To help maintain, keep you awake if you're in severe pain. That's why. Questions? Clear? Okay. The rest is easy. You guys have, you covered dermatomes and anatomy? No, yes, okay, somewhere. Then we'll talk about, then this should be really straightforward. So that I'm just going to color this. Okay, here in the program, they're very specific. When you're testing somebody's dermatomes, there are very specific places on the body where they want you to test. I'm just going to choose to label one side. It's the same on the opposite side. Okay? This is my rendition of, I call them zebra man, right? All zebra men are different. I mean, there's, there are approximate areas where you should touch, but specifically in this program, what level is this? Does anybody know? C5. That's C5. Let's label that. And then coming down here, we have the next one in order. C6 is green. Okay, let's make C7 purple. C8 this blue. And what else did I have? Ooh, orange. Use orange. This is T1. Okay, so just labeling the basic dermatomes that you have learned about. And specifically in this program, for C5, they want you to test for dermatomes here. Okay, C6. Here, C7, third finger, okay. C8, here, and then T1. It's going to be there. Okay, you guys have learned that already previously? Yes, good. Perfect. Okay, those are upper extremity dermatomes, and then we also have some lower extremity dermatomes to be aware of. Again, when you do, did that take that away too fast? Did somebody? Sorry. Here you go. My apologies. Yeah, so you'll learn how to test dermatomes, and also, you've already learned how to test myotomes. You don't know it yet, but that's pretty much gross motor screening. It's going to be myotomes, specific myotomes, so they're going to associate with the dermatomes, and then reflexes all to go together. If you're suspecting a nerve root injury in a patient, you should test dermatomes, myotomes, and reflexes. That is a triad. You will learn about CP as well as next year. So everybody got that now? Good. Looking at lower extremity dermatomes. Kind of the same. Okay, let's say Again, I'm just going to label one side. So this area up here, this would be L1. We don't usually test L1, right? But this area here is going to be L2, starting at the top. And then going down, the next is going to be L3. Orange. Okay, and then moving in medially, it's L4. And then going laterally, this is L5. Very end here, the foot, it's S1. And then, so I'm gonna, it's kind of around the back. I don't have a back view, but S2 is going to be posterior medial thigh. Thinking about labeling these guys. L2, point will be there. L3, darker marker. L3 is here. Okay, L4 is here. L5, there. S1, and S2 is posterior medial thigh. And again, these are just specific points that the program has adopted for testing. Any questions? Okay, not quite done yet. We've got